Welcome to this series in Ministry Corner. We are talking to active duty service member Aaron Griffin about how he ministers through his faith in uniform. Please watch the whole series and get all he has to offer. Welcome to the Ministry Corner, guys. I am Eric Gray, and this is Aaron Griffin. He's my guest today. We're going to talk about ministering in the military, and so let's get right into it. So, real quick backstory, Aaron. You and I, we served for a couple of years together here at what is now Fort Liberty. Used to be Fort Bragg, but that was over a decade ago at this point. And I asked you here today because I know that one, you're a Christian, and two, you're in the military, and I think you do the two well. So I want to give you a second, kind of tell us where you came to faith, not the whole testimony, just what was your backstory generally before you joined the military, if you can give us that.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for inviting me here today. I appreciate this opportunity. Before I go into how I became a Christian or my walk as a Christian, just a quick background with me. Been in the Army 23 years. Mm-hmm. I enlisted in 2000. I'm in the field artillery. I'm continuing to serve active duty. As far as my Christian walk, I grew up Catholic, used to go to Catholic school, felt that was very regimented. And when I was 18, my aunt invited me to a non-denominational service. Yeah. And it was there, I just felt something different. Got baptized when I was 18 before, shipped off to basic training. Been a Christian ever since.
All right. So in doing that, so you join. You're 18 right. years old. You're kind of a newly confirmed Christian at that point, right? So how strong or how bold was your faith at that time? Were you still trying to figure it out?
Yeah. So I wasn't shy about it. I shared it with people. Definitely not where I am now, because we're all a work in progress. It's been a journey, continuing to get better. But I would share my faith with people. I would invite friends and other soldiers to church. But I wasn't plugged in to a church quite yet, kind of church hopping. It wasn't until I actually got to RockFish Church that I was finally grounded and rooted in a church.
So that was how many years in before you really?
Oh gosh, it's probably 7 or 8 years. So by then I'm an NCO, non-commissioned officer. But right. Early on, it was kind of me, just a lone Christian. I was going to church, but I just wasn't surrounding myself with people like I do now.
I got you. So, excuse me, the church experience up until that point where you really felt grounded and connected to a stable church, was it going to chapels on post and getting different sermons from different denominations, or were you actually out there outside the walls outside the gates of the base and going to actual churches?
It was a little of both.
Okay.
I would say most of it was going to church services on post, on the installation. But there was also seasons where I wasn't attending church at all.
Yeah, I know those seasons too. So, and in that time, you were, both of us, we were dealing with the global war on terror. We were deploying to different countries for different reasons, multiple times. So, we were dealing with a lot of, differences, a lot of things incoming that we didn't have control over, right? Did you find yourself at any time in that season of not having that real grounded church, of finding certain connection points that did bring you along in your faith, whether it be a certain chaplain here and there, or a certain Christian that was playing that Paul role in your Timothy role?
Yeah, no, and so that's a great question. I can't think of anybody. Nobody jumps out at me as far as my time in the military, but I could think back to my grandfather as I was growing up. He was a man who, he was Catholic, but he demonstrated great faith and character in the way that he carried himself. And that was somebody that I wanted to emulate. And your most powerful testimony, it's your example. Right. And he got after it. And I could always find myself, if I'm struggling with something, kind of think, how would my grandfather handle the situation? And try to emulate that. So while I didn't have anybody in the military, I did have a role model in my family.
I got you.
As my grandfather.
And you had plenty of time and example with him, obviously, growing up, right?
Sure.
So it wasn't just like, hey, I saw this guy for 5 minutes, right? So there was that trusted relationship. So as a senior non-commissioned officer who's done this walk, who's experienced the growth, and also what would maybe we could call a dry season of not a whole lot of growth, what is your advice for the young soldier or the young Christian trying to combine these two lives, trying to live out these things?
So the advice I give is I give it every week when we meet new soldiers coming into the organization. One of the first things I tell them is that it's important that you surround yourself with good people. That's the most important thing. And they don't necessarily have to be Christians. Ideally, they're Christians, but they don't have to be Christians. But you want to ensure that you're surrounding yourself with good people, because bad company corrupts good morals.
Amen.
And then if you hang around 4 people who like to lick windows,
Yeah.
you're going to become the 5th window licker. And that's a story that I share with new soldiers when they come into the organization. So first and foremost, surround yourself with the right people.
Okay, so super practical advice, and I think most people kind of understand that that saying in this generation, right? Like, find the 4 or 5 people you hang around with in life, and I'll tell you, that's who you can expect to become, right? And that's a paraphrasing of it, but that's the general consensus. Like, what most people understand, who you let influence you is gonna decide who you become, right? So the very wise advice, but somebody who they don't just want to be successful. They want to be devout. They want to be proud of their Christian walk. Do you have any advice for those guys on like where to go, who to talk to, on base, off base, anything you can lend them?
Yeah. So the best advice I could get to give anybody to answer what you're asking,
Yeah.
is to get grounded in a church, in your local community. Because when I started attending RockFish Church on a regular basis, and I was surrounded by guys that just emulated and demonstrated the values that I wanted to demonstrate also, it just took me to a whole nother level, because it was in RockFish Church that I was able to have the conversations like we're having now.
Right.
And you also, for the first time in my career, I saw people in the military demonstrating those Christian values and speaking boldly about it.
Yeah, and I experienced the same thing, so I could totally relate. And so the difference in going to a church and going to a church where you're around people you can relate to, you look up to, in not just the church capacity, but you see guys who are being the father that you hope to be, guys that are
right.
being the military leader that you hope to be, right? And seeing that all of those they converge in a very healthy way, right? And so until I was attended RockFish, and I know there's plenty of other churches out there like RockFish that have this kind of community, but I had never seen that display before, where I was like, I'm surrounded by manly men, and they're living out their faith. And so I can learn from these guys, and I want to look up to these guys, right? And so all that really comes down to one word: discipleship, right? And so I think that's really what we're pointing to people to, is going to church is one thing, but seeking out being discipled is a whole nother, right? So, and I know that
Sure.
opening yourself up to it, that's where it really transformed me. So let's fast forward. So you were attending RockFish. That was impacting your life. The guy I met in 2011 was probably not that young Christian. You were extremely bold, and you took an opportunity to share your faith with me in a moment I wasn't expecting it. And so, I'm sitting here today, all because of a moment like that, right? And so, thank you. But so from that point forward, we'll just go to that 2011 point. Moving forward, what kind of growth have you seen now that you've been a senior leader? You've had new experiences, and you kind of have a little more license to kind of say what you want, and you got a bigger audience at the same time that you have access to on a regular basis, where people trust you. Can you give us some examples of how you're being bold and sharing your faith with everyone around you, whether they be peers or subordinates, or even your commanding officers who are looking to you but are still over you?
Yeah, I can give a couple, but before I do that, I do want to go back just a little bit. And when we're talking about attending church, it's more than just attending church. So with RockFish, it was, you got to get into the game. You just can't sit on the sidelines. So it was joining the A team. So I do want to emphasize that was instrumental in my spiritual growth.
Right on.
So I do want to hit on that.
Agreed.
So
Same thing here. Yeah.
It's so much more than just attending. You gotta get off the bench and get into the game, and that's what I did. And just the fulfillment you get in serving is it's something special. Now, as far as the NCO that you met and where I am now, yeah, I remember the incident you're talking about, and you shared it with me a couple times. And I guess in the moment I didn't realize I was being so bold, but I appreciate you sharing that with me, because it affirms that I'm doing the right thing. Now, how do I demonstrate, or what are some examples where I demonstrate my faith? Just been, I'm not gonna say a bunch, but there's been a handful of scenario situations where we're going through some tough times in the unit, or maybe a soldier is struggling with something. I'll share that during times like this, I lean on my faith, and prayer is something very important to me, and it's something that I use and employ to get through a tough time. I'll ask a soldier, after we've had a conversation, when we're done, like, if you're one of my soldiers today, Eric, do you mind, we just talked about X, Y, or Z, do you mind before we wrap this up if I just prayed over you? And I can't think of a time where a soldier turned that offer down.
Right.
So that's one example. I make sure that I'm attending prayer luncheons. I think that's big. That's important. I actively seek out chaplains and try to friend them for a couple reasons. One, as a senior NCO, it becomes an island almost. Because there's not, with the particular rank that I am, there's not a bunch of guys that same rank running around.
Your peer group shrinks,
right? Yeah, my peer group shrinks. That's
a
great way to share it. And so there's only one. And then when I look at the chaplain, there's only one chaplain. So. And this because we go back. My favorite Bible verse is iron sharpens iron. So as one person sharpen another, I actively seek out the chaplain and let them know that they're not in it alone. We can work together as a team to go in. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is taking care of soldiers. Yeah.
So you brought up something when it comes to whether the unit going through something or a soldier going through something. So do you feel more comfortable or successful in the unit setting or in the personal setting when relating to sharing your faith with somebody else?
Yeah, definitely in a more like intimate.
Okay, that personal, the one-on-one.
But there have been times where, something's happened. Maybe somebody was injured, or there's been times where we've had a fatality in the unit or the organization, and after you make that initial notification to the company battery platoon, whatever size element it is, after you make that initial notification, and you see that everybody, they're struggling. You can see in their eyes, they're hurting. I'm hurting. It's a shared hardship. I'll say, when we're all done, I'll say, hey guys, again, I'll share how faith is something that's very important to me. Prayer helps me cope with times like this and helps me get through it. I believe that there's power in prayer. Here in a second, I'm just going to go over here in the corner and I'm going to say a prayer. If anybody would like to join me, please do so. And then I'll just go in the corner, and it's really powerful. So
what's the response been like to an invitation like that?
Yeah, it's powerful. You don't have the entire formation going over there, but you do. You see first that one brave soul, that first one.
That other one that's willing to be bold, right?
Yeah, and it's so important that you have that individual in your organization, and you want to celebrate people like that first follower, because you're not a leader till somebody follows you. But anyway, you see, 1, 2 soldiers start to trickle over, and then all of a sudden you got a dozen, 20 soldiers there, and you got to lead them in prayer. Which I think highlights something else that's important. You got to practice prayer. I couldn't do that if I never prayed.
Right.
Especially in front of people. And because you and I used to serve on a team together. And I remember a time where Eric Gray was uncomfortable.
Oh, extremely. Still am.
Well, you're good at it. You've gotten so much better at it. But I think that highlights the importance of practicing it.
Yeah.
So that when you need to pull that arrow out of the quiver, you can do so. And it's got some lethality to it.
It's natural. Right on.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to sharing your faith boldly, is there any moment, and it's not that you have to have an answer of yes in this situation, is there any moment you like just stands out in my 23-year career? This was just like the most amazing experience I had. I shared my faith and I saw a response, or I shared my faith and I received confirmation, or whatever it was. Do you have any kind of moments like that in your 23 years?
Maybe the one that I just shared, where
Yeah,
we had a fatality through a training accident, and we went down to the motor pool, and the commander and I, we talked to the element, and again, just that response, that you could feel the Holy Spirit there. That was powerful. And then afterwards, the chaplain pulled me off to the side and just letting me know, hey, that was special to see you do that, because in doing that, I was nervous. Did I mess up? Am I allowed to do that?
Have I crossed a line? Yeah.
Yeah. Did I cross any lines?
Am I abusing my authority as far as the Army sees it?
And I don't think that it was, or I don't think it was an abuse in my position. Again, because I didn't make anybody do it.
Mm-hmm.
I said this is how I cope through situations like this, and I invited them.
Yeah, but that's the struggle we experience, right? Can I say this? Should I say this? Is it going to be an accusation against me, right?
Yeah, and I'm glad you say that, because I want to, for those watching this and they're trying to navigate those challenges.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be that challenging. So the Army, it encourages it. We talked about.
We're going to get to that part. We're going to get to with a different, in a different episode. So where they encourage it with different types of health, right?
Yeah, I just want to say spirituality is encouraged, and I think especially for leaders to demonstrate that faith is important to you, makes you a more effective leader. That's what I want to highlight.
I got you. And so I really wanted to talk about this boldness piece, because at least with you and a few others I've seen in the military, chaplains are great. They're the guy, or lady at this point, like there was a time in my career I didn't know you could be a female chaplain, and I totally stepped in.
I had one in my last unit. Amazing,
right?
Yep.
And so everybody has callings, right? Yep. And men and women can be called to pastoral callings. It's just difference in how we operate, right? But as far as chaplains, like they're there, but like I said, there's only one, right? Within a battalion, right? So we're talking hundreds of soldiers, one person for spiritual support among those hundreds of soldiers, right? So that chaplain, no matter how bold they are in their faith, they can only accomplish so much in their daily interaction with 1 or 2, 10, 15 soldiers, maybe a specific event, right? And a lot of times they're doing stuff for the commander, and the commander's plan for the unit. But it's the leaders, it's the senior leaders, it's the peers, even a subordinate in the right time, boldly sharing their faith. That's a different relationship. That's a different example. And the amount of touch points you have with that person on a daily basis that can impact you, or that you can be impacting, is so more profound than the chaplain that you'll see every once in a while or during a ceremony. And so, I thank you. I salute you for your faith and how you've shared it boldly, and others like you. But anyone who is also finding themselves in uniform and has this faith and hasn't been so confident they can share it, we need it. I think we're coming up on National Day of Prayer. We're going to pray for the military amongst other things. And if we have a military that's not full of people with godly values, then we'll end up with an ungodly military, right? And I think we all want to find ourselves serving with people that have shared values, which is kind of bring us into our next episode. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this one up, and we'll see you guys in episode number 2. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Ministry Corner. We look forward to seeing you guys next time. If you like what you're hearing, click that subscribe button, like and share with your friends, and we'll see you soon.